It sits in a filing cabinet somewhere in the state of California, a birth certificate, amended, quietly, without fanfare, without press release, without so much as a whisper from Montecito, and on that document, or rather conspicuously absent from that document, is something that should give every royal watcher, every constitutional scholar, every person who has followed this saga from its glittering beginning to its increasingly bizarre middle chapter, absolute pause. Because when Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor came into this world on June the 4th, 2021, something happened with the paperwork. Something that doesn't quite add up. Something that Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, the woman who has made victimhood her vocation and secrecy her superpower, apparently hoped nobody would ever notice, but people noticed. And now Prince Harry, the man who burned every bridge in Britain for this woman, who torched his relationship with his father, his brother, his country, his legacy, his everything, may be waking up to a reality so devastating, so fundamentally destabilizing that even the ghost-written pages of Spare couldn't contain it. Let's start with what we know. Because in the world of the Sussexes, what we know and what we're told are two very different countries separated by an ocean of spin. When Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was born in May of 2019, his birth certificate was a relatively straightforward affair. It listed his mother as Rachel Meghan Markle, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. It listed his father as His Royal Highness Prince Henry Charles Albert David, Duke of Sussex. Standard, royal, proper. Then something changed. In June of 2021, Lilibet was born. And the birth certificate filing for the couple's second child raised eyebrows among those who pay attention to such things, which in the age of the internet turns out to be quite a lot of people. Reports emerged of amendments, changes to how names appeared, alterations to the documentation that in the context of California family law carry implications that go far beyond mere administrative housekeeping. Now, let's be clear about something. Birth certificate amendments in California are not unusual in and of themselves. People correct spellings. They update names after marriages. There are perfectly mundane reasons to amend a birth certificate. But when you are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, when you are two of the most photographed, most scrutinized, most relentlessly publicized people on the face of the planet, and you amend a birth certificate quietly, without explanation, in a way that alters the legal presentation of parentage, that is not mundane, that is a choice. And Meghan Markle, whatever else you may say about her, does not make choices accidentally. Remember, this is the woman who orchestrated the removal of her own first name from Archie's birth certificate, initially listed as Rachel Meghan, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex, which was later changed to simply Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. At the time, the palace was blamed. Kensington Palace was thrown under the bus. The narrative was that Meghan had been forced to remove her name by the institution. Poor Meghan, victimized again. Except that wasn't true, was it? It later emerged that the change was requested by Meghan herself, or more precisely, by Meghan's representatives. The very same people who have spent years crafting a narrative of persecution have been behind the scenes, manipulating legal documents with the precision of a chess grandmaster who happens to have a law degree from Northwestern. Which, come to think of it, she does now. Let's talk about California family law, because this is where the story stops being tabloid gossip and starts being genuinely consequential. In the state of California, the legal father of a child is, in most cases, presumed to be the husband of the mother at the time of birth. This is known as the marital presumption of paternity. It is one of the strongest legal presumptions in American family law, and it exists for a very good reason. It protects children, it provides stability, and it prevents endless litigation over parentage. But, and this is the critical point, the marital presumption can be challenged. It can be rebutted. And the way it can be rebutted, the mechanisms through which it can be undermined, often begin with something as seemingly innocuous as the way a birth certificate is filed, what names appear, what names don't, how parentage is documented, whether amendments are made and when and by whom, in a divorce proceeding, And let's not pretend that word hasn't been hanging over Montecito like the California fog. The birth certificate is foundational. It is the starting point for custody determinations. It is the document that establishes who has legal rights to the children. And if that document has been amended in ways that create ambiguity, intentionally or otherwise, then the person who controlled that amendment process has in effect prepositioned themselves for a legal battle that hasn't happened yet. Think about that for a moment. Think about what kind of person in the first weeks of their child's life is thinking not about nappies and sleepless nights and the overwhelming joy of new parenthood, but about legal positioning, about document control, about the architecture of a potential future custody dispute. Because that, according to multiple legal analysts who have examined the available filings, is precisely what appears to have happened. Meghan Markle, it seems, was building a fortress before anyone even knew there was a war, and then there is Harry, poor earnest, well-meaning, tragically naive Harry. Let us consider for a moment the position of the Duke of Sussex. Here is a man who, by his own admission in Spare, has struggled with feelings of inadequacy his entire life. A man who grew up in the shadow of a brother who would be king. A man who lost his mother at the age of 12 and has spent every day since trying to fill that void with meaning, with purpose, with love. He found that love, or believed he did, in Meghan Markle. And for her he did what no senior royal in modern history has done. He left. Not just left, he detonated. He gave the Oprah interview. He wrote the book. He made the Netflix series. He stood on international television and accused his family, the royal family, the institution that has endured for 1,000 years, of racism, of neglect, of cruelty. He did all of this for Meghan. And now the emerging question, the question that is being whispered in legal circles, in royal commentary spaces, in the corridors of the very palace he abandoned, is whether Harry even understands what has been done on his behalf, or rather what has been done to him. Because here is the uncomfortable truth about Prince Harry. He is not a details man. He is not a person who reads the fine print. He is not someone who, when presented with a legal document by his wife, says, "Hold on, let me have my solicitor review this." He is a man who trusts, fully, completely, perhaps catastrophically. And in the world of California family law, a world Meghan Markle navigated with apparent ease, having spent decades in Los Angeles, having been through one divorce already, having surrounded herself with attorneys and advisors and strategists, Harry's trust may prove to be his most expensive quality. There is a particular cruelty in this, isn't there? The man who gave up everything, his family, his country, his military titles, his identity, trusting the woman he gave it up for, only to discover that she was, all along, quietly arranging the legal furniture for an exit he never saw coming. If that doesn't break your heart, I suspect nothing will. Now we arrive at the part of this conversation where I am supposed to be careful, where I am supposed to caveat and qualify and hedge, but this is not that kind of channel. And this is not that kind of story. The question circulating, and it is circulating widely in legal forums, in royal commentary, in places far more establishment than this humble corner of the internet, is this: why the secrecy around Lilibet's birth? Think about what we know. Lilibet was born at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. The announcement was made after the fact. No photographs were released for an extended period. The birth itself was shrouded in a level of secrecy that, even by the standards of the famously private Sussex operation, was extraordinary. And then the birth certificate issues, the amendments, the quiet legal maneuvering. Now I want to be crystal clear about something. There is no public evidence, no verified, documented, legally admissible evidence that Prince Harry is not Lilibet's biological father. I am not making that claim. What I am saying is that the way this has been handled, the secrecy, the amended documents, the legal positioning has created an environment where these questions inevitably arise, and whose fault is Harry's. Harry, for all his flaws, and they are numerous and we have catalogued them extensively on this channel, is a man who wanted nothing more than a simple family life. He said so himself, repeatedly, ad nauseum. In the book, in the interviews, in the carefully staged photographs of domestic bliss in Montecito, no, the architecture of secrecy belongs to one person. The person who has controlled the narrative, the legal filings, the public relations strategy, and the documentary record from day one. Meghan, always Meghan. And this brings us to a broader question, one that implicates not just the Sussexes but the institution itself. Why doesn't the royal family require DNA testing? It is, when you think about it, an extraordinary omission. We are talking about the line of succession to the British throne. We are talking about an institution that determines who will be head of state, head of the Commonwealth, supreme governor of the Church of England. An institution that controls billions in assets, that commands the loyalty of millions, that carries constitutional weight in 15 sovereign nations. And the verification of lineage, the most fundamental question in a hereditary monarchy, is left to trust. To the honor system, in any other context, this would be considered negligence. If a corporation worth billions relied on self-reporting for its most critical governance question, the board would be sacked. If a nation relied on the honor system for its nuclear codes, we would call it insanity. But the British monarchy, an institution that has survived civil wars, world wars, abdications, and divorces, operates on the assumption that everyone is telling the truth about parentage. And in the age of Meghan Markle, that assumption looks increasingly quaint. Now the counterargument is obvious. DNA testing would be invasive, it would be insulting, it would imply distrust, it would be, to use the modern parlance, problematic. But you know what else is problematic? The 6th and 7th in line to the throne having birth certificates that have been quietly amended by a mother with a documented history of narrative manipulation, a law degree, and a previous marriage that ended with the kind of clinical efficiency that should have been a warning sign to everyone. The royal family's failure to establish clear, verifiable protocols for lineage documentation is not just an oversight. It is a dereliction of constitutional duty. It is one that Harry's children, whatever their parentage, whatever the truth of these documents, will ultimately pay the price for, because ambiguity in a monarchy is poison. And Meghan Markle has been manufacturing ambiguity like it's a product line, and so we come to the most recent development. The one that has set the royal rumor mill spinning at velocities not seen since the Oprah interview. Harry, according to multiple credible sources, is planning a return to the United Kingdom. Not a visit, not a quick appearance at a charity event followed by a hasty retreat to the airport. A return. The nature of this return, whether it is permanent, whether it involves the children, whether it has been discussed with the palace, remains unclear. What is clear is the context. The divorce rumors are no longer rumors. They are a drumbeat. They have been building for months, accelerating through the autumn, reaching a crescendo that even the Sussex PR machine, the most aggressive reputation management operation since the Kremlin, cannot suppress. Harry has been seen without Meghan at an increasing number of events. The body language experts, and yes, I know body language analysis is not exactly peer-reviewed science, but when every single expert reaches the same conclusion independently, it starts to carry a certain weight. Have noted a man who looks tired, defeated, hollowed out. This is not the Harry of 2018, beaming at his wedding. This is not even the Harry of 2021, smugly lecturing the world from Oprah's garden. This is a man who looks like he has been hit by a truth he wasn't prepared for. And the timing of these return rumors coinciding with the emergence of questions about the birth certificate filings, is either the most extraordinary coincidence in the history of the monarchy, or it is exactly what it looks like. Harry knows, or at least Harry is beginning to know, beginning to understand. Beginning to see the contours of the trap he walked into with his eyes wide open and his heart on his sleeve, and his brain, apparently, switched to standby mode. Let us step back for a moment and consider Meghan Markle's track record with documentation, with narrative, with the careful management of official records. This is a woman who, and these are documented facts, not speculation, altered her name on her son's birth certificate and then blamed the palace. Who claimed to have been married 3 days before her actual wedding, a claim that was demonstrably, provably false, who told Oprah Winfrey that Archie was denied a title because of his race, when the actual reason was a letters patent issued by King George V in 1917, a century before Meghan Markle was even a consideration. This is a woman who, according to a judicial finding in the British courts, provided information to the authors of Finding Freedom and then told the court she had not. The judge used the phrase failed to recall, which is, in legal parlance, the politest possible way of saying something far less flattering. Pattern recognition is not conspiracy theory. It is intelligence analysis. And the pattern here, the consistent pattern of document manipulation, narrative control, and strategic misdirection, is not just suggestive. It is diagnostic. Meghan Markle operates on a simple principle: control the record, control the reality. And birth certificates, my friends, are the most fundamental records there are. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with a prince who may be waking up from a 5-year dream, or nightmare, depending on your perspective, to discover that the life he built in California was constructed on foundations far less solid than he believed. It leaves us with a duchess who, if these legal analyses are correct, has been positioning herself for years for a moment that Harry thought would never come. It leaves us with 2 children, Archie and Lilibet, who, regardless of what any document says, are innocent, who did not ask to be born into this circus, who deserve better than to be pawns in a game between a father who gave up his kingdom and a mother who may have been planning her own kingdom all along. And it leaves us with the royal family, the institution, the crown, the thing that endures, facing a question it has avoided for centuries. In a hereditary monarchy, how do you verify heredity? Answer: for 1,000 years was simple. You trusted, you took people at their word. You assumed that the bonds of marriage and honor and duty were sufficient. And then Meghan Markle arrived, and trust, it turns out, was not sufficient at all. I want to leave you with this thought. Prince Harry wrote a book called Spare. The spare heir, the second son, the one who would never be king. But what if the ultimate irony of Harry's life is not that he was the spare, but that he was the mark, the target, the one who was identified, pursued, captured, and used by someone whose ambitions went far beyond anything he could comprehend? Harry wanted love. Meghan wanted leverage. Harry wanted a family. Meghan wanted a filing. Harry wanted to escape the palace. Meghan wanted to become the palace, on her own terms, with her own documents, with her own version of events locked away in California court records where the British press can't reach them and the royal family can't challenge them. If that is what happened, and the evidence, circumstantial as it remains, points increasingly in that direction, then Prince Harry is not just the spare. Meghan Markle has never in her entire public life done anything without a reason. Not a single interview. Not a single wardrobe choice. Not a single tearful pause before a carefully crafted answer. Not a single friendship formed, maintained, or spectacularly ended. Everything, every single thing has been purposeful, directed, engineered toward an outcome that was decided long before the rest of us even understood what game was being played. This is not a criticism, exactly. Strategic thinking is not a moral failing. Ambition is not a crime. Planning ahead is, generally speaking, considered a virtue. The problem is not that Meghan Markle is strategic. The problem is what she has been strategic about, and who she has been strategic with, and what has been left behind in the wreckage of her strategy, the careers, the reputations, the relationships, the institutions, and most heartbreakingly, the people who trusted her when they should have been taking notes. Let's talk about the beginning. The real beginning. Not the fairy tale beginning that was sold to the public, the blind date, the mutual friend, the whirlwind romance. Let's talk about what was actually happening in Meghan Markle's life in the period immediately before Prince Harry materialized like a gift from the universe. In 2016, Meghan Markle was a moderately successful actress on a moderately successful cable legal drama called Suits. She was based in Toronto. She was, by the accounts of those who knew her at the time, restless, ambitious in a way that Suits, for all its gloss and legal theatre, was never going to satisfy. She had a lifestyle blog called theking. She had a humanitarian profile that she was carefully cultivating through UN appearances and World Vision trips. She had the infrastructure of a personal brand that was clearly designed for something larger than cable television. What she did not have was a platform sufficient for the scale of her ambitions. What she did not have was the kind of global reach that transforms a moderately successful actress into an international figure of consequence. And then in the summer of 2016, through a mutual friend at a polo event, and isn't it always polo with these people, she met Prince Harry. And the trajectory changed. Now, I am not suggesting that Meghan Markle did not have genuine feelings for Harry. That would be impossible to prove and frankly beside the point. What I am suggesting, what the evidence strongly supports, is that when Meghan Markle recognized what Harry represented, she made a decision. A clear, conscious, strategic decision. She decided to win and she won, didn't she? By any conventional measure, the courtship of Prince Harry was a masterclass in targeted influence. Within weeks of their first meeting, she had ended her long-term relationship with the celebrity chef Corey Vibes. Within months, she had begun quietly distancing herself from friends and associates who might complicate the narrative she was constructing. Within a year, she had moved countries, changed her entire public profile, and positioned herself as the inevitable future Duchess of Sussex. The speed of it should have alarmed people. It alarmed some people. Those people were not listened to. Jessica Mulroney, who would later fall spectacularly from grace in her own right, was brought in as a style advisor and close confidant. The relationship served Meghan's purposes perfectly. It gave her credibility in Canadian society circles, it gave her access to additional networks, and it gave her a loyal ally during the critical early period of the Harry relationship. When the relationship with Mulroney eventually soured and ended in public acrimony, it followed a pattern that anyone who had been paying attention could have predicted. Because this is what happens with Meghan Markle's close friendships. They begin with intensity and apparent devotion. They continue for exactly as long as they are useful, and they end, always, with the other party somehow bearing the blame for the collapse. Her best friend, her stylist, her media advisor, her half-sister, her father. Her first husband, members of the royal family, staff members at Kensington Palace who were so distressed by their working environment that they filed formal complaints. The list of people who entered Meghan's orbit as allies and exited as casualties is not a short list. And at some point, at some very specific, documentable, undeniable point, the question stops being about any individual relationship and starts being about the person at the center of all of them. Because in every single one of these stories, there is only one constant. Let us talk about the royal family's response to Meghan Markle. Because this is a chapter of the story that has been almost entirely rewritten by the Sussex narrative machine, and it deserves to be restored to its accurate form. The royal family, and specifically the late Queen Elizabeth II, went to extraordinary lengths to welcome Meghan Markle. Extraordinary lengths. The kind of lengths that the palace does not go to for anyone, let alone an American actress with a complicated family background and a previous marriage. The Queen invited Meghan to Sandringham for Christmas before the engagement was even announced. This was unprecedented. Members of the royal family do not bring unmarried partners to Sandringham Christmas. It simply does not happen. The Queen broke her own protocol, a protocol that had stood for decades, as a gesture of welcome and inclusion. Prince Charles walked Meghan down the aisle when her father was unable to attend the wedding. Again, an act of extraordinary generosity from a man who, according to the Sussex narrative, was cold, distant, and racially motivated in his treatment of the couple. The British public gave Meghan Markle a wedding that cost an estimated £32 million of public money, watched by nearly 2 billion people worldwide, and greeted her with the kind of genuine warmth and enthusiasm that the royal family has rarely extended to any newcomer in living memory. And in return, they got the Oprah interview, they got the Netflix documentary, they got Spare. They got allegations of racism that were never substantiated, never challenged in a court of law, never attached to a specific name or incident that could be examined and verified. They got a systematic, coordinated, internationally broadcast demolition of an institution that had welcomed Meghan Markle with open arms. Now, I want to be precise here because precision matters. Criticism of the royal family is legitimate. The institution has real flaws. It has real problems. It has, over the centuries, done real harm. None of that is in dispute. What is in dispute is the specific narrative of persecution that Meghan Markle has constructed. The narrative that she was uniquely targeted, uniquely mistreated, uniquely failed by an institution that was desperate to embrace her, but somehow simultaneously determined to destroy her. These two things cannot both be true, and yet they are both central to the Sussex story. The palace bent its own rules to include her, and also the palace was institutionally racist against her. The royal family gave her a £32 million wedding, and also the royal family refused her adequate support. The late Queen Elizabeth personally welcomed her with extraordinary warmth, and also the institution was so hostile that leaving was the only option for survival. I am not a logician. But even without formal training in formal logic, I can identify a contradiction when I see one, and now we arrive at the children. Because this is where the story stops being about institutions and starts being about individuals. Real, small, vulnerable individuals who have no say in any of this, who did not choose their parents, their titles, their country, or their circumstances, who are being raised in a bubble of carefully managed public image, surrounded by the machinery of a personal brand operation, in a compound in Montecito that functions less like a family home and more like a corporate headquarters. Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana deserve better than this. They deserve parents who are not, first and foremost, content producers. They deserve a childhood that is not a backdrop for a Netflix series. They deserve to know who they are genuinely, authentically, without the mediation of a PR team before the world decides for them. And here is the thing that keeps me awake at night, if we're being honest about it. Here is the thing that I cannot resolve no matter how many times I turn it over. These children have been weaponized, not in the crude, obvious way of a bitter custody dispute, in something more subtle and in some ways more damaging. They have been used as proof of victimhood. Archie's skin tone, the private conversation that was weaponized in the Oprah interview, attributed to an unnamed member of the royal family, and never verified, was deployed as evidence of institutional racism, without any mechanism for the accused party to respond or defend themselves. A private conversation, or an alleged private conversation, about a child who had not yet been born, was turned into an international incident that dominated news cycles for weeks, and permanently damaged the reputation of an institution that could not, by protocol, respond in kind. Think about what that means. Think about what it means to use your unborn child's hypothetical skin color as a weapon in a media war. And then ask yourself whether this is the behavior of a woman who was simply trying to protect her family, or whether it is the behavior of a woman who was executing a strategy. There is a concept in psychology called the DARVO response. It stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. It describes a pattern of behavior in which a person who is confronted about their own conduct responds by denying wrongdoing, attacking the person who raised the concern, and then repositioning themselves as the actual victim of the exchange. I am not a psychologist. I am not qualified to diagnose anyone, and I want to be absolutely clear that I am not diagnosing Meghan Markle with anything. What I am doing is describing a pattern of behavior. When the press raised concerns about Meghan's treatment of palace staff, she did not address the concerns. She denied them, attacked the press as racist and misogynistic, and repositioned herself as the victim of a coordinated media campaign. When the court found that she had misled her legal team about her involvement with the authors of Finding Freedom, she did not address the finding. She moved on, continued her media operations, and allowed her representatives to characterize the entire proceedings as harassment. When members of her own family, people who loved her, who raised her, who were present at moments she has since selectively rewritten, raised concerns about her public statements, she did not engage. She dismissed them as estranged, as bitter, as irrelevant, deny, attack, reverse, every time, without variation, without exception. And so we return to Harry. Because Harry is in the end the most important figure in this story. Not because of his titles or his bloodline or his constitutional position, though all of those things matter, but because Harry is the human being at the center of this, the person who has paid the highest personal price, the person whose suffering is most visible, most raw, most real. Watch the footage of Harry over the last 2 years, not the curated footage. Not the posed photographs from the Invictus Games or the carefully lit appearances at sustainable tourism conferences. Watch him when he doesn't know the camera is on him. Watch him at the edges of frames, in the background of other people's photographs, in the unguarded moments between performances. This is a man in pain. This is a man who has lost something, or perhaps who is in the process of losing something, and who does not yet fully understand what it is he has lost or what it is he still stands to lose. He left his family for a woman. He left his country for a woman. He compromised his integrity, his relationships, his reputation, and his legacy for a woman. And now that woman, if the reports emerging from California are to be believed, and increasingly they are to be believed, is repositioning, re-strategizing, adjusting her legal architecture for the next phase of a plan that Harry, in all probability, does not know exists. The divorce rumors have moved from whisper to drumbeat to something approaching open conversation in the circles that matter. They are no longer the province of tabloid speculation. They are being discussed by attorneys, by royal correspondents with established palace sources, by people who have been consistently right about the Sussexes when everyone else was wrong. And if a divorce comes, when a divorce comes, Harry will discover something that anyone who has been paying attention has known for years. In this relationship, Meghan Markle has always held the cards. She holds them in California. She holds them in the legal filings. She holds them in the documentary record. She holds them in the children's documentation. Harry, who trusted completely and questioned nothing, is holding precisely what he was always destined to hold. Nothing. I want to say something about the British public because I think it matters. The British public, by and large, gave Meghan Markle a chance. A genuine, open-hearted, historically unprecedented chance. They lined the streets of Windsor in their hundreds of thousands. They bought the commemorative mugs. They watched the wedding with their families and they cheered, genuinely cheered, for a woman who represented something new and exciting and potentially wonderful for a monarchy that sometimes struggles to feel relevant. The British public did not turn against Meghan Markle because she is American. They are broadly unbothered by Americans. Some of their favorite royals have been Americans, well, one of their favorite royals, but the point stands. They did not turn against her because she is biracial. The idea that the British public, who elected a biracial man as Mayor of London and cheered him enthusiastically, who watched a biracial woman captain sporting teams to glory, who have embraced diversity in every sphere of public life. The idea that this public turned against Meghan Markle purely because of her heritage is an insult to their intelligence and their demonstrated values. They turned against her because they watched her, carefully, over time. And what they saw did not match what they were being told. They saw a woman who was briefing the press while publicly condemning the press, who was cultivating relationships with American media outlets while accusing the British media of persecution, who was claiming poverty while renovating a $14 million mansion, who was citing privacy as a fundamental value while simultaneously producing a documentary series about her private life for a global streaming platform. The British public are not sophisticated political analysts. They do not need to be. They have something better, a finely tuned, generationally calibrated instinct for authenticity. And their instinct, applied to Meghan Markle, returned a very clear verdict. Where does this end? That is the question everyone is asking. In the palace, in the press, in the legal community, in living rooms across the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth and the United States. Where does the Sussex story end? I think it ends, and this is my honest assessment, not a wish but a prediction, with a divorce that is presented to the public as mutual and amicable, and handled with characteristic Sussex dignity, which is to say it will be presented to the public through a carefully choreographed series of exclusive interviews with sympathetic American outlets. It ends with a custody arrangement that reflects the legal prepositioning that has been quietly undertaken over the past several years, and which will leave Harry, the man who gave up a kingdom, with less access to his children than he currently imagines possible. It ends with Meghan Markle pivoting to the next chapter of her brand, the independent, empowered survivor narrative, which she has been laying the groundwork for since approximately 2019. And it ends with Harry, somewhere in Britain, attempting to rebuild the relationships he destroyed, reaching out to the family he abandoned, trying to explain to a father and a brother that he is sorry, that he was wrong, that he should have listened. Whether that family will be in a position to receive him, given the damage done, given the words spoken, given the accusations made on international television, remains to be seen. The Crown forgives. Eventually, it always has. The question is whether Harry will forgive himself. I want to close with something that I think gets lost in all of this. In all of the analysis and the legal commentary and the document examination and the pattern recognition, there are two children in Montecito named Archie and Lilibet, and they are innocent. They are utterly and completely and heartbreakingly innocent. They did not choose any of this. They did not choose their mother's ambitions or their father's naivety or their grandmother's institution or their great-grandmother's legacy. They chose nothing. And they will inherit everything, every interview, every document, every allegation, every amended birth certificate, every burned bridge and broken relationship and public accusation and private legal maneuver. They will grow up and they will Google themselves and they will find all of it. And whatever we think of their parents, whatever judgments we make, whatever conclusions we reach, whatever verdicts the evidence supports, we should hold those children in our minds as we make them. Because they are the ones who will carry this story longest. They are the ones for whom the truth matters most, and they deserve the truth. All of it, unspun, unmanaged, unmediated by a PR team with a brand to protect. They deserve to know who their parents really are, what was really done, what was really said, what the documents really say. They deserve, in short, exactly what their mother has spent years ensuring they will never have. Trevor Engelson has never spoken publicly about the divorce. Not once. Not a single interview, not a single social media post, not a single comment to a friendly journalist. He has maintained a silence about his marriage to one of the most discussed women on the planet that is, frankly, superhuman in its discipline. There are two possible explanations for this silence. Either Trevor Engelson is a man of extraordinary grace and personal dignity who has chosen to protect the privacy of a painful chapter and move forward without rancor, or Trevor Engelson signed something, a non-disclosure agreement of the kind that Meghan Markle has, according to multiple reports, required from an impressive number of people in her life, staff members, former associates, people who knew things. People whose silence was valuable enough to purchase. I cannot tell you which explanation is correct. What I can tell you is that the silence itself is data. That a man who was married to Meghan Markle, who watched her become the most talked about woman in the world, who could have sold his story for sums that would have made him independently wealthy for the rest of his natural life, has said absolutely nothing. That is not nothing. That is a choice so deliberate it practically screams. And the question of what Trevor Engelson knows, what he saw, what he experienced, what he understood about the woman he married that perhaps a certain British prince never had the opportunity to discover, is one that sits at the very foundation of this entire story. Let us talk about the staff, because the staff are always the most reliable witnesses. They are the people who see you before the camera is on and after it switches off. They are the people who experience you not as a performance but as a reality. They are the people who have the least incentive to lie. They gain nothing from fabrication. They risk their professional reputations and their livelihoods if they speak out of turn, and they are protected by the confidentiality requirements of royal household employment. And yet, multiple members of staff at Kensington Palace, experienced, professional, loyal members of the royal household, who had served previous members of the family without incident, filed formal complaints about their treatment by Meghan Markle. These complaints were documented. They were submitted through official channels. They were serious enough that palace officials considered them and in at least some cases took action. When these complaints became public knowledge, when the Times of London reported on them in the days immediately before the Oprah interview aired, the Sussex response was immediate and overwhelming. They accused Buckingham Palace of leaking the story to undermine them. They suggested the timing was deliberate. They characterized the complaints as an institutional attack, coordinated to damage their reputation before they could speak for themselves. What they did not do, what they have never done to this day, is address the substance of the complaints. Not once. Not a single specific allegation from a single specific staff member has ever been addressed by Meghan Markle on the record. The response has always been meta. Always about the fact of the reporting rather than the content of the reports. Always about the motives of the people raising concerns rather than the concerns themselves. This is a technique. It has a name in communications strategy. It is called topic switching. And it works when it works, because the audience becomes so focused on the argument about the reporting that they forget to ask about the thing that was reported. Meghan Markle is extraordinarily good at topic switching. She may, in fact, be the best in the world at it, and now let us address something that has been circling this story like a shark that hasn't yet decided to attack: the money. Because this is a story that is, at its core, substantially about money. About the acquisition of financial independence. About the construction of a revenue base that does not depend on the goodwill of the British monarchy, the British public, or the British press. When Harry and Meghan left royal duties in 2020, the event they have carefully branded as stepping back, as if they were merely adjusting their position rather than detonating a constitutional grenade. They made much of their desire for financial independence. They wanted, they said, to stand on their own 2 feet, to earn their own living, to stop being financially dependent on the crown. This was presented as admirable, aspirational. A couple of modern people making a brave choice to forge their own path. What was less discussed was the financial architecture that made that independence possible. The Netflix deal, reportedly worth $100 million. The Spotify deal, reportedly worth $25 million. The book deal for Spare, reportedly worth $20 million. The speaking engagements, the brand partnerships, the ROYAL Foundation. The as-ever lifestyle brand that Meghan has recently launched with the kind of carefully managed reveal that would make Apple's product launch team feel professionally inadequate. All of this, every single revenue stream, is built on one thing and one thing only: the Sussex brand. And the Sussex brand is built on one thing: their relationship to the royal family they claim to have left behind. Think about that for a moment. Really think about it, because it is perhaps the central irony of this entire saga. The couple who said they were leaving the royal family in order to achieve independence have constructed an empire whose entire value proposition depends on their continued connection, even if that connection is defined primarily by conflict, to the institution they left. Remove the royal titles. Remove the palace backstory. Remove the wedding, the crown, the lineage, the constitutional drama. Remove Harry's birthright and his mother's memory and his grandmother's legacy. What remains? A lifestyle brand and a podcast, which is fine. There is nothing wrong with a lifestyle brand and a podcast. Millions of people have them. Most of them are not worth $100 million to Netflix. The royal family is the product. It has always been the product. And Meghan Markle understood this before anyone else in the room did. Let's talk about the Oprah interview properly. Not the version that was discussed at the time, in the white heat of its immediate impact, when the allegations were fresh and the emotional manipulation was at its most effective. Let's talk about it now, with the distance of years, with the benefit of everything that has subsequently emerged. The interview was conducted by Oprah Winfrey, who is a close personal friend of the Sussexes. It was produced by Oprah's production company. It was broadcast on CBS, which has a financial relationship with the Sussex media operation. And it was presented to the world as journalism. It was not journalism. It was a brand activation event. It was a coordinated media offensive designed to do two specific things: to preempt the publication of negative coverage about the Sussex departure from royal duties, and to establish, permanently in the global public consciousness, a narrative of victimhood that would insulate Meghan Markle from accountability for anything that followed, and it worked. Magnificently, appallingly. It worked in the way that only the most expertly executed communications operations work, by making its audience feel that they were witnessing spontaneous, authentic emotion, rather than a carefully scripted performance. Consider the mechanics of the interview itself. Consider the famous moment, the moment that dominated global news for weeks, when Meghan revealed that a member of the royal family had raised concerns about Archie's potential skin color before his birth. She named no name. She cited no context. She provided no corroboration. She made an allegation of racial bias against an unnamed individual in one of the most prominent media events of the decade, in a format that provided no opportunity for response, challenge, or verification. And the world accepted it. The world accepted an unverified, unattributed, unchallenged allegation of racism because it was delivered with the right facial expression, in the right setting, to the right interviewer, at the right moment. This is not how serious allegations should be evaluated. This is not the standard we apply in courts, in journalism, in public discourse when the stakes are lower. But this is what happens when narrative control is absolute. This is what happens when one person holds all the cards and the other person, by protocol and tradition and the particular paralysis that afflicts institutions under attack, cannot respond. And Harry sat next to her. Through all of it, Harry sat next to her. He sat there in his open collared shirt and his carefully arranged casual posture, and he confirmed and he nodded, and he added color to the allegations, and he looked at his wife with an expression that people called love, but which, watching it again now, looks considerably more like a man who has been told exactly what to say, and is concentrating very hard on saying it correctly. I have watched that interview many times. I do this not because it is enjoyable. It is, in fact, one of the more uncomfortable viewing experiences available to the serious royal commentator, but because repetition reveals things that a single viewing conceals. And what repetition reveals is this: Harry is not leading in that interview. He is following. Every significant revelation comes from Meghan. Every moment of emotional weight is carried by Meghan. Every allegation, every accusation, every devastating claim is initiated by Meghan. And Harry's role is to sit beside her and provide the visual confirmation that this is a shared account, a mutual experience, a story they are telling together. But it is not a story they are telling together. It is a story Meghan is telling, with Harry as a prop. And the most heartbreaking part of it, the part that makes you feel genuine sympathy for a man who has done things that are genuinely difficult to sympathize with, is that Harry either doesn't know this, or he knows it and cannot bring himself to acknowledge it, which is a different kind of tragedy. Entirely. Let us address the question of Meghan Markle's relationship with the truth, because this is a subject that requires care. It requires specificity. It requires us to deal not in impressions or feelings or interpretations, but in documented, verifiable, legally established facts. Fact. Meghan Markle told Oprah Winfrey that she and Prince Harry were married 3 days before their official wedding ceremony, in a private exchange of vows in their garden. This claim was widely reported and celebrated as a romantic detail that humanized the couple. The Archbishop of Canterbury, who performed both ceremonies, subsequently clarified that the garden exchange was not a legally valid marriage. It was a private moment. The legal marriage took place on May the 19th, 2018 in front of the world as previously understood. Meghan had said something that was not true. The correction was reported briefly and then quietly forgotten. The original claim persists in countless articles, profiles, and retrospectives to this day. Fact. Meghan Markle told the court in her privacy case against the Mail on Sunday that she had not contributed information to the authors of Finding Freedom, the unauthorized biography that was broadly favorable to the Sussex position. The court subsequently found, on the basis of evidence provided by her own communications secretary, that she had in fact provided information through an intermediary. The judge was diplomatic. The word used was that she had failed to recall. But failing to recall that you spoke to the authors of a book about yourself, through your own communications secretary, stretches the boundaries of credible memory failure to their absolute limit. Fact: multiple claims made in the Netflix documentary Have Heart and in the memoir Spare have been challenged, disputed, or flatly contradicted by people who were present at the events described. The alleged altercation over the flower girl dresses. The alleged conversation about Archie's skin color. The alleged hostility from palace staff. In each case, the Sussex version exists in isolation, unsupported by contemporaneous evidence, contested by other witnesses. This is a pattern. A documented, verifiable, legally established pattern. And patterns, in the absence of alternative explanations, are the most honest data we have. Now let us talk about what is coming, because there is something coming. Anyone who has been following this story with genuine attention, rather than partisan enthusiasm, can feel it. There is a momentum to current events, a gathering of forces, a convergence of circumstances that suggests the next chapter of the Sussex story is not going to be a continuation of what has gone before. The brand is underperforming. The as-ever lifestyle range launched to reviews that were polite at best and quietly devastating at worst. The comparison to Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop operation is not favorable to Meghan. Paltrow, whatever her critics say about her products, has built genuine commercial traction over more than a decade. The Sussex brand has the celebrity but lacks, so far, the commercial infrastructure to support it. The media deals are expiring or have expired. The Netflix deal produced content that was watched but not loved. The Spotify deal ended without the flagship podcast delivering the cultural impact that was promised. The replacement podcast with different distribution has not replicated the reach that Spotify's platform provided. The relationship, and we must address this, because it is the elephant in every room in Montecito, is generating the kind of coverage that no PR operation can manage away forever. The absence of Meghan from events where her presence would be expected. The photographs of Harry that show a man who looks increasingly like someone counting down to something. The sources multiple, consistent, independently arrived at who describe a marriage under severe strain, and Harry's reported desire to return to Britain, to reconnect with his family, to find his way back to something he recognizes, something solid, something that was there before the whirlwind arrived and rearranged everything. This is a man looking for the exit. The question is whether the exit is available to him, and on what terms, and what he will be required to leave behind when he walks through it. I want to say something about the institution. Because through all of this, through the interviews and the documents and the allegations and the counter-allegations and the Netflix series and the book and the podcast and the lifestyle brand, the institution has endured. The monarchy is still there. King Charles is still there. Prince William and Princess Catherine are still there, doing the work, meeting the people, representing the country, carrying the weight of a role that Harry chose to lay down. And the public, the British public, the Commonwealth public, the global public that follows the royal family with the kind of invested attention that no other institution commands, has watched all of this and made its assessments. The assessments are not kind to the Sussexes, not because the public is unsophisticated. Not because they are racist, or anti-American, or blindly devoted to an institution they refuse to question. The British public questions the monarchy constantly, vigorously, sometimes ferociously. It is one of their great national traditions. The assessments are unkind because the public watched a woman receive extraordinary privilege, and then use it as material for a grievance industry. They watched a man abandon his family and then write a book accusing them of things they could not publicly deny. They watched two people claim victimhood while living in a $14 million mansion and signing 9-figure media deals, and they found the performance unconvincing, not because they couldn't see the emotion. The emotion was visible enough, but because they could also see behind the emotion, the calculation. And calculation, dressed as feeling, is the one performance that the British public has never been willing to applaud. So, where does Meghan Markle go from here? This is the question that her strategists are asking, that her attorneys are asking, that the people who have built their professional reputations on the Sussex brand are asking with increasing anxiety, because the current trajectory is not sustainable. The grievance narrative has a natural lifespan, and that lifespan is determined by the willingness of the audience to keep feeling the appropriate emotions on cue. And audiences, particularly audiences that have been manipulated, develop resistance. They become harder to move. They require larger doses of drama to produce the same emotional response.